Our political commentator Colin James is with us now to assess everything that we've been covering this morning. Morning, Colin. Thanks for joining us this morning. What did you make of Russell Norman and that interview?
Oh, he covered the ground pretty competently, I think, and laid out his case. There are four elements behind this. One is that John Key is still very popular, and just as National had to knock over Helen Clark, the Labor and the Greens need to knock over John Key. The second is, as he said, the Greens are not a niche party anymore. Now they're a bigger opposition party, so they can't just present nice policies. They've also got to be a bit oppositionist. That's the way they feel. The third is that nice John Key has been calling them nasty names. They've been calling them Muppets, Fruit Loops, the Devil Beast, Noddy, and told Russell Norman to go back to Australia. But the final point is the one that he underlined, and that is that this government has been not paying enough attention to due process, and he calls it the rule of law, those sorts of issues. And that's the Muldoonist parallel, I think. And if anything, I haven't been back to check, but if anything, this government is less attentive to due process than Sir Robert Muldoon was back in the 1970s and early 80s.
OK. He said that it was, Russell Norman said it was a lapse of judgment on the part of some very senior Labor MPs to go to Sky City's corporate box. Just how damaging has that been for Labor?
Well, I think it is quite damaging, and certainly some people in the Labor Party think that, and the Greens think that. And it was an error, definitely an error of judgment in my view. Here they are talking about Sky City making money out of problem gamblers and damaged people, and next thing they're hobnobbing with them with drinks. But I think there's another dimension to this. The Sky City's communications manager is Gordon John Thompson, who used to be Chief of Staff and the leader of the opposition's office, leader of the Labor opposition's office. He did a good move for his employer, but it wasn't a great move for his previous employer. And I wonder whether the blowback in Labor on this will actually mean that Gordon John Thompson will have set up a Labor Party which will be less accommodating to Sky City when it gets into power than it would have been.
Do you think?
But as you suggested to Russell Norman, not good political management. There's still some work to do there to get a coherent party on the Labor benches.
It's the question that seems to be bandied around all the time about whether David Shearer is the man who will take Labor to the election. What do you think?
Well, I think he will, and I tested this just in the last week carefully, and my view is that he will, and it's partly because it's very difficult to see how an alternative can be put together. Now, of course, these things suddenly happen, so always keep open the possibility that he will be changed, replaced. But at the moment, the message I'm getting is no, he won't be. So he goes to the election with the Labor Party unless some sort of crisis develops. Now, he wasn't at those drinks, by the way. He turned it down, so he did the right thing.
Nonetheless, we do seem to hear, as we just heard a moment ago from Russell Norman, an increasing frustration on the part of the Greens at some of the follies, if you like, that are occurring within the Labor Party and the way that Labor seems to be managing itself. And that's just purely because if it's to get into government, it needs Labor to be a strong coalition partner, doesn't it?
It's an interesting calculation that has to be done. The Greens need Labor to actually do quite well, otherwise they won't be in the government. And at the same time, as he said, they're in competition with Labor. They want to keep their number of seats up, and if anything, get some more. It's a very difficult balancing act to do, but it's made even more difficult if the Labor Party is not really strong and seen to be strong by the public. I think probably right now, if you went down the street, people might well say Russell Norman's the leader of the opposition, and that is from the smaller party of the coalition in waiting. That's not a recipe for winning office.
Can they successfully, do you think, Russell Norman and Maturia Toure, play this good cop, bad cop role?
Well, some people would say that Maturia actually is sometimes the bad cop and Russell's the good cop. But as you say, at the Green Conference, it was certainly the other way round. And yes, I think they can. And it was really interesting the way they played it that weekend. Maturia with that very wide smile and that nice voice, and she wasn't getting tough on John Key at all. She said that he'd been calling them nasty names, but then she sort of politely set it aside. So we'll see how this goes, but I think we might see some alternation, and every now and then we might see Maturia in full cry.
Well, what about John Key in these past couple of weeks? Is some of the shine beginning to come off a little?
Yes, I think it is, he's shown some vulnerabilities over the last few weeks, and we'll go back to late March, and yes, the Fletcher affair, but his popularity is still fairly high. He's come down from the stratosphere to the troposphere, but there are now some Conservatives who are having some doubts about him, and those people who were upset about him in the past are now much more vocal. So there are some vulnerabilities there that I would be bothered about if I was the National Party and managing through to the election.
All right, Colin James, as always, thank you for your analysis this morning.